Welcome, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Claudia Lewis. I'm a teaching assistant in Biobehavioral Health Science Division, RN to MSN in Clinical System Leadership at the University of Arizona. Today, I will be presenting you a lecture about plagiarism. By the end of this presentation, you will be able to define plagiarism, understand the code of academic integrity, understand the consequences of plagiarism. You will be able to describe intentional versus unintentional plagiarism. You also be able to identify the different types of plagiarism. You will be able to recognize plagiarism and understand how to prevent it. And you also will be able to complete the test that will summarize your knowledge. Let's begin by defining what plagiarism is. The 6th edition of American Psychology Association, APA Manual, defines plagiarism as action taken by one that claims the words and idea of another as their own. You should use quotation to indicate exact words from another author, and you should cite your source if you are paraphrasing another author, just like I did in above. I used quotation when I was exactly wording the APA manual, and I also cited the source on the end. Second, very important definition is the definition of self-plagiarism. As the 6th edition of APA manual defines, self-plagiarism as an action taken by one to present their own previously published work as new. Self-plagiarism includes submission of paper or work submitted for another class or another university. So literally speaking, if you have submitted any of your assignments or papers for any other classes or any other universities, you cannot reuse them. That will be self-plagiarizing. Code of Academic Integrity. As a student, it is your responsibility to understand and read the Code of Academic Integrity. Code of Academic Integrity implies that integrity and ethical behavior are expected of every student in all academic work. Based on this code, as a student, you are not allowed to cheat, fabricate, facilitate academic dishonesty, or plagiarize. Below on this slide, I placed direct link to Code of Academic Integrity. Please make sure you familiarize yourself with this particular code. There are many kinds of plagiarism. Right now I would like to introduce you to intentional versus unintentional plagiarism. But first, let's start by introducing you to consequences that may happen if you do plagiarize. Intentional and unintentional plagiarism are the two main kinds of plagiarism. Both, when detected, carry consequences based on the severity. As per Code of Academic Integrity, consequences may include a written warning, loss of credit for the work involved, reduction in grade, notation of the violation on the student transcripts, failing grade in the course, revocation of student degree, suspension, and expulsion from the program, department, college, and university. Again, consequences are based on severity of your plagiarism. Please make sure you familiarize yourself with the Code of Academic Integrity as well as this particular lecture on all kinds of plagiarism so you can understand it and avoid it. Now we can learn about intentional plagiarism. Let's think about it. What does it mean, intentional plagiarism? It means you intended to or were aware that your work is not yours. So, intentional plagiarism is passing someone else's work as your own that includes paying for it or having somebody voluntarily doing the work, submitting already graded work, or reusing the same paper or assignment from either prior classes or other colleges, copying papers and assignments from online sources and friends, cutting and pasting ideas, sentences, and paragraphs from one or many other sources to create a paper. Some of intentional plagiarism happen because you did not cite to give a credit to the original author, or you are cheating. Unintentional plagiarism. Unintentional plagiarism happens usually due to lack of or still need of more education about citing, quoting, and paraphrasing. Unintentional plagiarizing, it is still treated the same as intentional plagiarism. So please make sure you use our college resources to help you with citing, quoting, and paraphrasing. Now, you can unintentionally plagiarize when you're not citing or citing incorrectly, when you applying quotation marks incorrectly and or not surrounding the whole quote, or when you're using two similar words or sentence structure to the one within original work. So be very careful with paraphrasing, quoting, and citing. Now, let's practice. Types of plagiarism. Here on this slide I'm presenting you 10 types of plagiarisms. Those 10 types are created by iParadigm LLC. iParadigm LLC is the company that created Turn-In software. Turn-In software, it's used by the majority of the colleges to detect student plagiarism. So, those 10 examples I hope will serve you to, in the future, avoid further plagiarism. Please listen closely. I will also provide you with examples. Number 1 is a clone. Clone is an act of submitting another's work, word for word, as one's own. Control C, a written piece that contains a significant portion of the text from a single source without alterations. Number 3, find, replace, the act of changing keywords and phrases but retaining the essential content of the source in the paper. Remix, an act of paraphrasing from another source and making the content fit together seamlessly. Number 5 is recycle, the act of borrowing generously from one's previous work without citation. This will be an example of self-plagiarism. Number 6 is hybrid, the act of combining perfectly cited sources with copy passages without citation in one paper. Number 7 is a mashup, a paper that represents a mix of copy material from several different sources without proper citation. 404 error is a written piece that includes citation to non-existent or inaccurate information about source. So please make sure when you use citation and you write those citations, that they are correct and that the teacher can access the citation source with no problems. Or this will be 404 error kind of plagiarism. Number 9, aggregator. The aggregator includes proper citations, but the paper contains almost no original work. Retweet. The paper includes proper citation, but relies too closely on the text of original wording and or structure. So now, on the bottom, I provided you with the link to turnin.com. So if you wanted to learn a little more, please visit that site. Now, I will go over every type of above discussed types of plagiarism and show you the examples. Now this is the fun part. Let's go and look at the examples. Example number 1 is example of the clone plagiarism. Again, a clone plagiarism is an act of submitting another's work word for word as one's own. As you can see, on one side you have original work, and on the other side you have unoriginal work. What happened was, the student exactly copy and pasted the paragraph from original work and call it as its own. That is clone example of plagiarism. Number 2 is Control C. It's when a written piece that contains significant portion of the text from a single source without alteration. As you can see on one side when it says original paper, and then on the other side you can see unoriginal paper. Pink highlights means the copy of the paper was directly taken from original source. You can tell that the students only added few little words in between of what was copied. This is Control C kind of plagiarism. Third example is find and replace. Find and replace is the act of changing keywords and phrases, but retaining the essential content of the source in the paper. Again, original side and unoriginal side. The pink highlights the part that the student exactly copied from the original part. In this example, you can tell that student only added few words inside of his work and submitted the paper as its own. This is find and replace type of plagiarism. Next, I will show you remix. Remix is an act of paraphrasing from another source and making the content fit together seamlessly. So, original paper on one side and unoriginal paper or submitted by a student paper on the other side. Pink says parts of directly copied from original part. Gray color and lightly gray color shows too closely paraphrased parts. Again, be very careful when you're paraphrasing. Please refer to the resources in the college. This is remix kind of plagiarism example. Now we will talk about recycle type of plagiarism. This particular kind is an example of self-plagiarism. This is the act of borrowing generously from one's own previous work without citation. Here, you should self-cite yourself or your previous work. Again, on one side, original, on the other, unoriginal. And pink highlights mean too close to original paper. Sixth type of the plagiarism includes hybrid. Hybrid is an act of combining perfectly cited sources with copy passages without citation in one paper. Again, you can see original on one side and unoriginal on the other. Pink highlights mean exact quotation, exact copied from previous paper. Gray is the passage without citation. So, you can see that in the pink part, they exactly copy the original part, where in the gray part, they did use quotations. However, there is no citation on the end. That is hybrid kind of plagiarism. Mashup. A paper that represents a mix of copy material from several different sources without proper citation. You can see on an original paper that student copy exactly some of the parts of the original paper and also utilized other resources. But there is no citation in the whole paper at all. That is mashup type of plagiarism. Number 8, 404 error, is when a written piece that includes citation to non-existent or inaccurate information about source. Here you can see that student did a very good job citing. However, the citations could not be found, or the source of the citations could not be found. This is just to caution you to make sure that you use citations that your teacher can follow or find. Also, make sure that you use correct style of APA citation form, so again, the source can be found. Number 9, it's aggregator. Aggregator includes proper citations, but the paper contains almost no original work. You can see here in an example of an original paper that majority of the material was directly taken from somewhere. The student has cited correctly, but there is very little of original work. Number 10, retweet. This paper includes proper citation, but it relies too closely on the text and original wording and or structure. Again, you can see in original work that there is a very little of students' own work, and it is too closely copied from the original paper. I hope that going over those 10 types of plagiarism helped you, but I also would like to mention something that it's called common knowledge. Common knowledge includes current and historical events like a president election, Mother's Day, President's Day, famous people, for example, Mother Teresa, Winston Churchill, or geographic areas like Bermuda Triangle, USA, Europe, and general information, for example, water boiling temperature is 100 Celsius, ice can melt. Those are the only times that you do not have to cite, because they are common knowledge, which means no one needs to do further research to try to explain what you are talking about. Only when you use those examples, you do not need to cite. Now let's practice. Example 1. Nina was sick all week. She procrastinated till the last week to work on her paper due for her anatomy class, and now she is not feeling good. Taking care of home, family, and working full-time is too much work. But she paid so much money for this school. She was tired, frustrated, and disappointed. After her husband came home, Nina shared her frustration with him. He listened and after a few minutes he said to her, "I wrote a paper very similar to your assignment 2 years ago when I took that class online. I will find it and you can use it." Nina was so happy, so she could copy and paste most of her husband's paper and submit it. Now, is this intentional plagiarism or unintentional plagiarism? This is an example of intentional plagiarism. Nina intentionally took her husband's work and submitted it as her own. Example 2. Tal is writing his paper for the history class. He writes, "Today is May 2013. It's beautiful day in the United States of America. The sun is shining, but the outside temperature is below the freezing point at about 31 degrees Fahrenheit. Today is an important historical event as we have chosen the new president. His name is Barack Obama. He will be our president for the next 4 years." What is this example of? This will be an example of common knowledge. As you see, there is no citation needed, as the weather, the temperature freezing, and the important event as a president election as well as president's name is considered a common knowledge. Only then you can use no citations. Example 3. Daniel is a first-year nursing student. He is unfamiliar with APA formatting. He took several tutorials on how to cite and format his reference in APA format, but is still unsure of his citing. Now, original. Researchers do not claim the words and ideas of another as their own. They give credit where credit is due. Now, Daniel's version is, as a researcher, you do not claim the words and ideas as their own. You give credit when credit is due, and he cited. Is this intentional plagiarism or unintentional plagiarism? Above example is an example of unintentional plagiarism. Now look at this. This is the correct way. I will explain to you why Daniel was unintentionally plagiarizing. Now, look at example of the original. Researchers do not claim the words and ideas of another as their own. They give the credit when credit is due. Daniel's work. See the red highlighted area? That is when he used quotations, and then in a light pink is his citation. Below in a yellow is the correct way to cite. Daniel not only poorly paraphrased the content, but also cited incorrectly and quoted incorrectly. This is why it is very important that you use your resources to avoid unintentional plagiarism. Example 4. Kathy was running out of time. She really wanted to go and see a movie with her friends, but the paper was due in a half hour. She thought, let me copy and paste some of this and sentence from this website. It is still my work. I'm doing it. So she did. She used this sentence from one of the journals. Original journal. Original web-based. And then Kathy version. What do you think? Is this intentional plagiarism or unintentional plagiarism? Absolutely, you're right. This is example of intentional plagiarism. Now let's look at correct way of doing it. Again, you have original journal, example, original web-based, then Kathy version, and then correct version how it should be done. Now, Kathy cut and pasted the content from two different sources. She used a mashup type of plagiarism. She also cited incorrectly and did not quote. Now just remember few tips on how to recognize plagiarism. You plagiarizing when? SBB is a short for stealing, borrowing, or buying assignments, essay, papers of presentations or homework. When you paying or voluntarily having someone else write your paper for you. When you reusing the same paper that you wrote for another class. When you replicating, copying, pasting a large portion of another authored paper without giving the credit back to the author. When you borrowing an idea from another without citing the author. Now, keep this in mind. When you are not using your own idea or work, you are plagiarizing. How can you recognize plagiarism? You are plagiarizing when you did not cite, when you used anything that was not your own idea, any dates, statistical data, charts, diagrams, pictures, or drawings that are not yours, any video or audio medias that includes reposting or reusing them, information you gain by personal conversation, email, phone, or in writing. Bottom line, cite stuff you did not create as you cannot take credit for it. Now here are some resources that I would recommend you to use when you are unsure of plagiarism. Also, you can refer to your syllabus or to your teacher and ask questions. In summary, I would recommend that you always cite and quote. Use the resources you are given to make sure that you are following the requirements. Always check your syllabus for more information. If in doubt, refer to your resources or ask your professor. Do not use or copy or paste any part of someone else's paper unless you quote or cite. Be creative. Do not reuse your own work. Make sure you are summarizing the material when paraphrasing, not just switching words. Good way to learn paraphrasing is to read the material and then try to write a summary from your memory. And always refer to an APA manual to help with citation and reference. Thank you so very much for listening to this lecture. I hope you learn, and I hope you can prevent yourself from plagiarizing. Please, next step is to test your knowledge. And again, thank you for listening. Have a great day.